Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today I am joined by Coach Natalie and Coach Andrea. We're talking about why you're not losing fat even though you feel like you are nailing the plan and really digging into the four different levels of adherence. I think that adherence is very misunderstood in that most people who aren't making progress or aren't making the progress they think they should be making genuinely believe they're adhering to the plan. But when we zoom in, their version of adherence is not actually the same as executing the plan as written. Now, it doesn't mean you're lazy, lying, not working hard. We just kind of need to, you might be. No, genuinely. It's very rarely malicious, but we often just need to recalibrate what 100% adherence actually looks like. Now, context of this episode, I'm going to say is mostly related to fat loss outcomes. This is like a very, if we apply adherence, like how closely do we need to be tracking, measuring everything across all the different phases? You may have heard Andrea ask at the very start of this episode how many parts we think this is going to be. This would be an even longer conversation if we applied across all the phases. So I'm going to keep it mostly specific to fat loss and like how closely we need to adhere to get the best outcomes. But it is very nuanced based on what phase we are in as well. So from there, all right, so um, fat loss is kind of the context of this. Before we get into it, anything y'all want to add? We just keep ripping. Cool. All right, so I was just, as an example, I was just discussing this with a client recently who reported she'd nailed the plan this week, but body composition just really hadn't changed as much as we'd expected. So basically her targets were on her low days, we had her at 1235 calories. Her high days, we had her at 1765 calories. When I looked at her adherence tracker, where we have clients put in calorie intake and macro intake, for reference, let's just rock with her low days. Like her low days were 120 carb, 65, or 120 protein, 65 carb, 55 fat. Her high days were 120 protein, 220 carb, 45 fat. So when I looked at her tracker, basically what we saw right out of the gate, okay, let's review this week, see why we didn't make progress. First, we have a day that's entirely untracked here. So right away, if we're looking at like, okay, I 100% nailed the plan, immediately, if we have a whole day that we didn't track, we can't really say we nailed the plan, right? We were at best at 86% adherence. And then from there, it was like macros are very inconsistent. So if we look at this chart here, visual I have it pulled up for y'all, like we have basically 2 out of 7 days was she within plus or minus 10 of her protein goal. Five out of those days, well, one of those days she just didn't track. The other 4 days she was below that range. Similarly, if we look at carbs, there's not a single day we're even within plus or minus 10 of our carb goal. 3 out of 7 days are we within the fat range. In terms of calories, we have 2 days where we're within plus or minus 100 of our calorie goal, right? We're not too terribly far off calories. We're also not great here by any means. So it's kind of just all over the place, right? Macros are basically extremely inconsistent. She's under eating protein, carbs all over the place. We're inconsistently fueled. Most days she's under eating fat, quite a lot of rest days, which we intentionally place to keep hunger lower. Then also when I looked through her food logs, I saw, okay, we have a bunch of meals out this week. There were a good amount of meals where it was like calories seemed severely underestimated. For example, like she logged a sushi roll as the whole roll was 20 calories per piece, which would be like, I think it was like a 100-calorie roll. Andrew, are you a sushi person?
I like it. I haven't had it in quite a while.
Okay. I think we can all say like it would be insane for a sushi roll, unless it was like just straight tuna
Yeah,
to be just 100 calories, right?
maybe sashimi.
Yeah, like it may be a piece of sashimi, but dramatic underestimation. And that was the reality of like most of what I saw here. So it's like, okay, I know you're not trying to be malicious with this, of course. This is part of like the education process of coaching, but we are way, way off here in terms of like what we think is 100% and what 100% actually is and how close we need to adhere to make progress. So reality that we're going to get into is really most people just overestimate their adherence and underestimate how much small deviations can add up. And then the leaner and more advanced you are, the less room for error we also have. If we're talking someone who wants to lose like 20 to 30 pounds, broad strokes may work. But if you're already lean, trying to get leaner, like most of our clients are, details do matter a lot. One meal out in a week can make a huge difference in your progress. People hate to tell you that, but it's very true. A few bites, licks, taste, inaccurate entries can be the difference, or a missed cardio session can be the difference between making a lot of progress in a week and none. Now, again, the goal of the episode isn't going to be to make you feel bad. We want to help you understand the difference between trying hard and generally being consistent, mostly following the plan, and actually executing and getting the result. All right, so anything to add before we talk through what does nailing the plan 100% look like?
I will add. Okay.
Please do.
So we've got, for listeners that are not viewers, we've got an outline here with talking points, and we have like this week of eating laid out. So I'm like looking at each day's macros. And from doing this for a very long time with a lot of different clients, just upon for like it is color coded, so that helps. But with even without that, just like looking at the targets, I can tell right away that there is just so much inconsistency. And it's not just about the numbers zeroing out, and lining up perfectly. It's not that. But when I see such wildly fluctuating numbers day to day, I can tell that food sourcing is inconsistent and all over the place. So even with certain clients that we do have doing, let's say, like just a protein and calorie goal. So this person is letting carbs and fats fall where they may, right? And they just have to hit like a protein goal and a calorie range. Even that person, if I am seeing wild fluctuations day to day, I can tell right off the bat they are doing a lot of IIFYM and winging it. Like, I don't even have to look at a food log to know that. So even if you're not, I mean, I know that this episode is very much geared toward a lean person getting leaner and like having to pay attention and fine tune the details to get, to that next level. But like, just from a very baseline, right off the bat, like just visually, I can tell that there are so many inconsistencies, and probably also everything that I talked through there, probably tracking inaccuracies, because what we're eating is fluctuating so wildly day to day and we're winging it. We're probably also making tracking errors because there's a lack of attention to detail and a lack of planning and organization.
Absolutely. That's a good shout. That's something I've tagged with several clients recently. Even if we are tracking our food, when we see such wild fluctuations in macros, there's normally a lot of error sneaking in. Or this same client I use as an example, obviously we've been having a lot of conversations like this last week. So we had a breakthrough this last week because this has been, we've worked together for over a year now. We haven't made nearly as much progress as she's capable of. And I've told her that over and over. There have been probably like 5 or 6 instances where I've been like, dude, we have to just follow the meal plan. I'm going to build out a meal plan. Just follow it for just a week. Let's see what kind of progress you can make when we don't have these meals out, when we don't have like all this room for tracking error. And she's committed to it, hasn't followed through with it. We kind of came down to, again, like this last week. Okay. She's like, I'm nailing everything. I hit my cardio, I hit my food. I'm tracking as accurately as I can, I think. And things just aren't moving along. She's not eating a ton of food right now. I think like 1,400 calories on average. It's like, okay, next step from here is just, again, I mean, it would be the same as what we discussed before. We've done your blood work. Your blood work looks good. Like, can we just do a week of you follow the meal plan? I actually said, we're gonna do this. If you don't do this, I'm gonna pull my hair out, because we've talked about this so many times. And she did it for 4 or 5 days of the week. But still, in that time, we have never seen her dip below, in the entire time we've worked together. We pushed for fat loss a large amount of it. We've never seen her get below 54 kg. She dropped all the way down to she was 53.4 kg in the matter of just 4 days of doing this. We saw her lose like an entire kg in that week of just a couple days of this. And I was like, okay, so what are the takeaways from this? Well, she's like, well, I guess I found out I could still track my food more accurately. And anyways, that was a cool breakthrough, but very relevant to your point as well, Natalie. Cool. Anything else before we continue? All right, so let's talk about, what does nailing the plan 100% look like? Here again, this is not just I mostly ate healthy or I did my workouts. It means executing the plan exactly as written. We talk about often what a beautiful thing it is when a client just follows the plan as laid out, because people get great results. But again, this is part of why I want to clear this up, so more people can just get great results. So 100% adherence means all food consumed has been weighted or measured. Everything has been tracked accurately if we're following like a more flexible approach rather than just a meal plan. Macros are hit within the prescribed ranges if we have them, or again, we just like ate the food amounts listed in the meal plan, nothing additional. But the key is that those foods are actually measured, not just guesses like, okay, this looks pretty close to 100 grams of potato or whatever it may be.
Or like half a banana, or
Correct.
like one apple.
Right. One large steak. That one always cracks me up. Like a generic steak entry. It's like there's hundreds of calories difference here.
One
Um,
tomahawk.
there are 0 untracked bites, licks, taste, sauces, calories from drinks, or other extras. Cardio and steps are completed as assigned at the intensity assigned. Right? The plan only works as well as the version of the plan you execute. But feeling like you generally manage things well is not the same as nailing the plan. So from there, let's discuss some things people think are 100% adherence, but are not. Number 1, I hit my calories, but rarely hit macros and or micros. This is pretty common where I'll see like a lot of clients will say they nailed the plan because calories were pretty close to targets. But if the plan includes macro targets, then adherence means hitting those targets, not just like, hey, we're pretty close to our calories. Yes, calories are going to be the most important variable for fat loss. But at the level that most of our clients are at, your food sourcing does make a lot of difference in terms of, do we have adequate carbs to fuel training, recovery? Do we have this fats to support different hormonal processes? A lot of times we're like biasing more fat or more carbohydrate to better manage hunger depending on like where we're at in the client's day. Are we hitting our micro needs, which again is going to keep us in the healthiest, most responsive place? So again, not at all the same thing to like, hey, I was pretty close to my calories, especially when we're consistently under our protein target, which is going to be such a big part of like the satiety from the diet we get. Like the thermic effect of these foods are going to be different, which is relatively minor, but still like it does add up to calories burned or not burned across the course of the day. So not the same thing there. Anything to add before we continue?
Yeah, I had a client this week who I think this whole conversation will be very relevant to. And, after she was very receptive to my feedback at her check-in, so kudos to her, shout out. She was very receptive to the feedback. And even called herself out, on socials, which was cool to see. But, she's doing a protein and calorie approach, and usually she manages it quite well. And she was like, "Yeah, it was a really good week." And, I went in there and it was like, actually the calories weren't hit every day, and like it was kind of all over the place. And there were a lot of days where protein was like really, really high. Like even with just a protein, and to the average person, that might not really sound that egregious. Because like let's say there it was like a 130 protein per day or whatever, and often her protein was like 170, 180. And again, to like your average person, someone might be like, well, I mean, you could do worse, right? Like, that's not bad. And it's like, right. Except this is a lean person trying to get leaner. We're trying to optimize body composition. Okay. This isn't generic health. Like, yes, you do need to be healthy to optimize your body composition, but we are here to optimize your physique. And so if you are robbing Peter to pay Paul in terms of, I'm jacking up my protein like 40, 50 extra grams, that's coming out of the bank somewhere else via carbohydrate, which we need to like optimize your training performance, which is how you're gonna stimulate muscle growth and get like the shape that you want, and or dietary fats, which are important for like, brain health, heart health, like a whole slew of other things as well. So no, like, if you can digest large boluses of protein, like you could do worse. It's not the worst thing in the world. But again, it's coming at the price of something else that we have fine tuned to optimize your body composition.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful clock. I no, a very good point. That's protein is the one that I think often gets overlooked, and that yes, it can still be detrimental to our process to push that too high. Next, I hit my macros, but with estimated meals, i.e., we had, let's say, Chipotle or honestly almost any meal out where, hey, like plug in this generic, okay, what is it, like 4 ounces of rice or 6 ounces of chicken or whatever, like when you look at up Chipotle and MyFitnessPal or Chronometer, whatever their generic amount is for the rice or the meat, cool, we just plug that in. But the reality is they didn't weigh that out, they didn't measure that. We don't know this is actually accurate. It is most likely not. Even when restaurants list their nutrition, there will still be very significant variance in what you actually consume. Think about like 2 Chick-fil-A sandwiches, something that's near and dear to my heart, but they're never the same size. Like the patties are a lot different. Like you don't know how much butter was on the bun, etc. If we are eating out realistically, like it's gonna be our best guess regardless. But again, it's not. This is, and it's okay. I'm not saying like we shouldn't ever really eat out, but the reality is, if we want to nail things perfectly, we want the quickest possible progress. In a fat loss phase, it is going to make things harder. If we do want to make the quickest progress in a phase like this, if we are eating out, we would want to go with something like the mustard salad example we talked about in the past, right? Where like, hey, we're going to go with a lean protein where we know the exact type listed, for example, chicken breast, and then quantity listed, which even then I would say probably isn't perfect. Or you could go like a filet, right? And then we have an 8 ounce filet. Okay, that's pretty accurate. And then I can request that it's cooked in no butter or no oil. Pair that with like a very low calorie veggie that I can estimate quite accurately. And then again, cooked in no butter or no oil. Even then, this isn't a perfect measure. But if we're looking at like Andrea, okay, you have another peak week coming up. You've, of course, both of you have gone through your preps. Like in your last like 8, 10, 12 weeks before prep, are you having meals out, or before your shows, are you having meals out?
No, no meals out. Nothing fixed not by me.
Natalie, same. Okay. And again, like this is not to say like this is just for education, right? This isn't to say there's a right or wrong here. Like I have a ton of clients who still are working in meals out and we're still like seeing fat loss progress again. But I also have clients where it's like, dude, we're trying to work in way too many of these, and this is absolutely killing our progress. And it feels like you're nailing things, but you're not, because there's so much variability here that is holding us back, right? So again, this isn't to say we shouldn't. This is all just like, this is objectively just like math, right? Where, hey, there's a lot of room for error sneaking in here, and it could be something that's holding us back. So if we're not making progress, we need to understand how much this is going to impact things. Next, I hit my macros, but had untracked bites, licks, tastes. We've talked about this example a lot. Like, let's say you are spooning out some peanut butter and then you lick off the spoon. We get like 6 grams of peanut butter there. That's like 36 calories. Let's say you have a little bit of bread crust because your kids hate the crust. They're so ungrateful. And so you eat it, you don't want the food to go to waste. You just like have a couple bites of the bread crust. That's like 30 to 40 calories. Right? We have a couple Triscuits when your kids are snacking on Triscuits. It may be just like 2 tortilla chips, right? Like not a lot, not enough to make a big difference, but that's another 30 to 40 calories for each of those, like the Triscuits and the chips. Little nibble of a cookie again, just a little tiny piece, not a big deal. We can easily get like 40 calories there. And we have like a sip of, I don't know, your kids are getting a smoothie. We would have a sip of that. That's like 30 to 40 calories as well. Can easily add up to 200 to 250 calories in a day. Over the course of a week, 245, let's say, times 7, that's like an extra 1,700 calories roughly across the course of the week, right? If we're trying to create a 3,500 calorie deficit in a week to lose about 1 pound per week, we just cut our rate of loss in half just by like those little tiny things, right? That don't seem like a big deal, which we'll discuss more later. Next thing that people think is 100% adherence, but isn't, I hit my macros, but did not account for drinks. People often forget liquid calories or assume something is 0 calories when it's not. Now, the most glaring example of this is alcohol. I have one client who recently, we just got started and like things weren't moving how I expected. And I like looked at her tracker. She reported the number of drinks she had, and it was like 10. Then I looked at her chronometer and it was like, there's nothing in here to track towards that. So we're a little bit off our goals. So alcohol is a big part of that. Like that in itself is like, I mean, that's at least like 1,500 calories, like those 10 drinks that went untracked. Again, that's like half of our weekly deficit if we're trying to lose a pound in a week. But other examples would be like energy drinks that are labeled 0 that still have 20 to 40 calories in them, right? Like, okay, like this Monster that I have, this is Monster Energy 0 Ultra. and it has a little thing right here that says 0 and then like 0 sugar per can. But it is still, I mean, the calories are listed as 10. It has 6 grams of carbs. 2 of that is from erythritol. So realistically, what we have like 16 calories in there. But I mean, if we drink a couple of those in a day, that still adds up. Coffee creamers, almond milk or oat milk in your coffee, pre-workout drinks, electrolyte drinks like your Gatorade Zeros, your Gator Light Zeros still have like 10 to 20 calories. There's a lot of things that are labeled 0 that actually have some calories in them. But again, like let's consider a lot of energy drinks like your Celsius, Ghost, whatever, have 20 to 40 drinks per can. Let's say you drink 2 of those per day. That adds up to 420 calories per week. So if you're a lean woman aiming to lose, let's say we're trying to lose 3/4 of a pound per week, which again, for our demographic is not unreasonable by any means, especially towards the end of a fat loss phase. So we need a 2,625 calorie deficit. Just that extra, again, like, hey, let's say we track everything else perfectly to a T, no extra calories consumed. We just have these 2 energy drinks a day that we don't count towards the totals because they're just like, the can just has like 10 calories each, right? That actually, just that erases 15 to 20% of our deficit just by those 2 things. Again, like it's not fun to hear, but it's just the reality of it. If we're not making progress, we need to understand these things. Anything to add there before we continue? All right, next, I hit my macros, but did not track condiments. Quite similar to what we just discussed. Often seem like they shouldn't be a big deal, often are a big deal. So your sauces, glazes, oils, and butters on top of proteins, especially meals out. This is one I'm always harping on clients about with like, okay, we had this steak or chicken or whatever, this dish out. Hey, we should probably track like a tablespoon, at least a half tablespoon of olive oil alongside that, because there's undoubtedly going to be butter or oil on this unless you specifically request otherwise. Same thing if we get like veggies while we're out. Similarly, unless we request, it's very rare that it's going to be like just veggies without some type of oil or butter on top of them. Barbecue sauce, lots of calories there. Ketchup, salad dressings, marinades, cooking sprays. Even your 0-calorie cooking sprays do actually have calories. It's just like what, for a 4th second spray, I believe is 0 calories. It's just such a small amount that it's negligible. But if we go too heavy on that, it absolutely adds up. Or like another easy one for people to forget is like lining the pan with olive oil, for example, before we cook something. Some of that is absolutely absorbed as well. So let's say you're a big ketchup person. I love ketchup, by the way. You know, Natalie doesn't like ketchup. Andrea, you like ketchup? Really crazy. Oh man, I could swim in some ketchup. Anyways, not as much as mustard, but I'm a big fan. Let's say you do like ketchup. We have some ketchup on our sweet potato, just a couple tablespoons, 4 tablespoons. If you like ketchup as much as I like ketchup, it doesn't go that, like 4 tablespoons isn't that much. That's 76 calories per day. Which again, 532 calories per week makes a big difference. Next, I hit my nutrition but missed my cardio or didn't do my cardio at prescribed intensity. So let's say you nailed your nutrition perfectly. You even tracked your energy drinks, but you only hit 2 of your 4 cardio sessions. That still changes our weekly energy balance by a lot. For example, let's say we have a 135-pound woman who misses 2 of her 4 cardio sessions. So we get 60 out of 120 minutes of cardio done. She missed 2 30-minute sessions. That again reduces their deficit by like 350 to 400 calories. So again, we're back to where we were with the energy drink thing. Like, hey, we just reduced like our expected rate of loss, our expected deficit by 15 to 20%. If this is literally the only thing we miss on in the week. For a lot of people, there's a lot more than that we're missing on in the week. Ditto for not hitting your intensity, which is another very important one, right? Like if it's kind of like, it was really hard to get my heart rate up. Like to a degree, like yes, we want it to be fairly challenging. Typically with the cardio we're prescribing, you should be able to somewhat like hold the conversation. You shouldn't be too winded in like the zone 2 range, but we do want to make sure you're getting your heart rate up to ensure we're burning the appropriate amount of calories. So if we're not hitting our intensity, makes a big deal. Similarly with steps, a 135-pound woman will burn very roughly about 40 calories per 1,000 steps. So if you miss your step target average by 1,500, we again reduced our weekly deficit by about 420 calories. Which again, it's not uncommon to see in like a tracker, like I was about 1,000 below my average target or 1,500, which again doesn't seem like that much, but that definitely eats away at our deficit to a large degree. Finally, I hit my macros but swapped food for alcohol. Now, I'm not anti-alcohol by any means, right? Definitely enjoy a drink from time to time, but there's a time and a place for it, especially in fat loss. It can make things more challenging. Most importantly, like ethanol is not one of the macros prescribed in the plan. Our body can't use it for recovery, building new muscle, etc. Alcohol mostly being ethanol. So just understand that, like, hey, if we're in a deficit, our food is already limited, especially if we're in a phase where we're like trying to recomp and get leaner at the same time. We really need like all the food we can get while still losing to recover. Your body's not going to be able to do anything useful with those calories, right? So again, it's this one I wouldn't say isn't like we didn't hit our targets if we tracked it, but it's not going to be ideal for our progress. Again, I'm not opposed to clients drinking. Like, it's up to everyone, and I drink from time to time as well. Just understand the trade-offs you're making there. Anything to add to that before we get into the next section?
These are typically not in isolation either. So
Correct.
you just named 7 different categories of things that are often just a bit off. And typically it's not just, okay, I was absolutely perfect except for I had 2 Triscuits in the entire week. Like, normally it's just a little bit of multiple different things, and then like each of these one things can add up to make a pretty big significant difference. But then whenever we're compounding multiple of those things, that's how people can be like, man, I'm eating 1,300 calories a day, but I don't understand why I'm not seeing any progress. And I also would add on that too, this is unfortunate, but like smaller women who already need to have such a small amount of food in order to lose weight, this is going to be, I would say, even more significant for that type of person because there's just such small margin for error there.
If you think
Absolutely.
about like this small person that Andrea is mentioning, who maybe has to diet on very low food, if you are looking at like percentages, so let's say someone's dieting on like 12 or 1,300 calories. So like one spoonful of like Ben and Jerry's, like percentage wise, like that's a fairly high percent of your daily calories. So it like doesn't feel like a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot. You stuck to the plan. And kind of also, like Andrea said, it's really doubtful you just had like the one spoonful of Ben and Jerry's. Like there are probably a couple other things as well. But again, like math equation wise, the percentage of 12 or 1,300 calories, that's a significant chunk. Versus someone who's in a building phase and let's say they're eating like 2,300 calories. It's a much smaller dent, relatively speaking.
Sure, for sure. Or like again, the client I referenced several times. That's been another conversation we've had where it's been like, but I'm really hungry in my deficit right now. And I'll look at our food logs and it's like we are eating 400 calories of like 1,300 calories are coming from a chocolate bar in our day. So like 33, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. None of this is to like demonize anything, but understand like that is not going to be very filling or going to give us a lot of in terms of like working towards our macro targets. It's not going to help us a lot there either, but it's not going to be very filling, right? That's literally a third of your daily intake. That's like a whole meal that we just ate in, or a meal plus, depending on how we're splitting things up on this 1,300 calories in a single chocolate bar. That again just isn't going to be very filling for us. So our food selection we need to be intentional with. Okay. Next, things people think are 80 to 90% adherence, aka following the plan pretty close, but aren't. So again, we'll often hear people say, hey, I'm consistent like 80 to 90% of the time. So I don't know why I'm making progress. Now, I don't think people are actually measuring out like, again, all this is just about math. Just working through the math of all this helps make it so much more sense, helps make it make so much more sense. But like 80 to 90% is actually a lot more adherent than most people realize. What people usually mean when they say this is, okay, Monday through Friday afternoon, I'm pretty solid. A couple of those examples we mentioned before are probably sneaking in here as well. But then Friday night is pretty loose. Saturday is very flexible. I really probably just like don't track my food on Saturday. I kind of don't track my food again most of the day Sunday and then feel bad and get back on track later in the day. So Sunday is like halfway on track. That is going to be so far from us actually being like 90% dialed in. For example, if you eat 4 meals in a day, that's 28 meals per week. 90% adherence would mean you hit your nutrition targets on the nose 25.2 out of those 28 meals, or 6.3 out of 7 days of the week. If we're just looking at it like a per meal equation, basically we're at here, like this person who, let's say they hit their targets Monday to Friday afternoon. And again, this is like we hit our targets perfectly Monday through Friday afternoon, which we're probably not, but let's say hypothetically we did. Even then, with that example I used, we're still only hitting our targets 18 out of 28 meals per week, which is like 64% adherence. That's not going to be a passing grade for most of us in terms of fat loss, which is again why though most people, because it feels like most of the week, like, hey, I'm doing everything right, but the results don't match. This is why people get stuck there. Anything to add there before we continue? All right, so working through levels of adherence. Level 1, non-adherence, where you're just really not following the plan. Examples of this would be we're missing a workout or a cardio session almost every week. We're not tracking food or following a meal plan, just doing things that seem pretty close or quote unquote eating healthy. We're not measuring our food, we're just guesstimating it, or we're frequently going over our calories. We're not hitting our steps. We're consistently taking full days, i.e. the weekends, off from the food plan. And this doesn't have to be all those in concert, but all these are very common examples of like, hey, we're taking a couple days off per week. We're just estimating most of our foods. We're missing our steps. We're missing a training session or cardio session most weeks. We're just really not sticking to the plan very well. Thus, our expected outcome here is minimal to no progress. Level 2, mediocre adherence. This person follows the plan most of the time. So, hey, they probably hit their calories and protein most days. They train pretty consistently. They get most of their steps and cardio done. They track most of their food. Maybe have the occasional untracked meal or bites. And again, here we're talking about fat loss. We're not talking about the context of where an untracked meal is worked into the plan, which it often is. And weekends are decent, but probably a lot less structured. And there's, again, a lot more untracked food sneaking in here, more bites, licks, tastes, things like that sneaking in. The expected outcome here would be, which again, like, hey, they follow the plan most of the time. We're not too far off here. For beginners or someone who has a lot of fat to lose, hey, they can maybe make some decent progress here. But for a more advanced person or more advanced goals, again, we're not going to make a lot of progress like this. Level 3, we have high adherence. This is someone who executes the plan with intent. So examples would be, hey, this person weighs and tracks their food accurately. They hit their macros within target ranges 6+ days per week. Maybe there's one day where they still hit their calories and protein and the macros, the carbs and fat are a bit off. They rarely play macro Tetris. If they do, they will plan ahead. They keep meals out to simple options that are easy to track and very often going to have requested modifications. Again, like, hey, can I cook that without oil or butter? They don't miss training sessions. They complete all their cardio and steps. For like everyone, almost everyone, this will lead to predictable good progress. Level 4, elite adherence would be 100% execution, right? We're nailing everything. All food is weighed and measured. All macros are hit within the prescribed ranges. We have no untracked bites, licks, tastes, drinks, sauces, or extras. Minimal to no meals out unless they are specifically planned. And again, we for sure can like weigh this accurately. But again, if we're looking at like this would be an example of like either of you in your contest preps, right? Where it's like, hey, that just introduces room for error. And I want to know like if nailing this 100%, cool. That's not going to be a play for now. They bring their food with them when traveling and they nail the supplement regime. Now, if we're looking at, again, like a contest prep, if you want to be competitive or even like, hey, we want to really get the best possible results out of a photo shoot prep, this is probably how we would want to handle things. Again, ultimately, like the closer we can be to 100%, the better the result will be. And all of this, the leaner you are, the more it matters. As we discussed, just your margin of error will be so much smaller. Someone with a lot of fat to lose will probably have more potential to make progress with just broad consistency or a decent amount of consistency and just improving from their previous baseline. But if you're already lean and trying to get leaner, these small deviations do matter more. Again, let's use the example from earlier. A 135 pound woman trying to lose about 3/4 of a pound per week, which is about a 2,625 calorie deficit. Again, just that example of, let's say she's just not considering 4 tablespoons a day of ketchup. That's 76 calories. She has those 2 energy drinks that are 60 calories, some extra oat milk in her coffee, Or maybe instead of that, she's 1,500 calories under her step goal. Her deficit just got 200 calories smaller per the day, which doesn't still like even 200 calories. Hey, that doesn't seem like much, but across the week, that's 1,400 calories. That just erased more than half of that deficit that she was trying to create, right? We just went from at best losing 0.75 pounds in the week to losing like 0.375 pounds per week. And again, if we missed a cardio session or a training session, that could easily remove another 300 plus calories. We're only, at that point, we're only in like a 700 calorie deficit. We'll lose 1 pound every 5 weeks at this rate, right? Again, that's just a simple, like those few extras we talked about. Maybe she misses a training session or cardio session. Again, the difference between losing about 3/4 of a pound per week and losing a pound every 5 weeks. But I can guarantee you either way, this person is still going to feel like they're dieting just as hard because these things are so small. They don't make a big difference in like our hunger or how difficult the diet feels. And the reality is like the above examples, these examples we discussed before of like little quote unquote calorie ads that can sneak in, they're very small ones. Like that example I used there, like the couple energy drinks, the ketchup, steps being a bit lower, a little bit of oat milk. It is very easy for so much more than that to sneak into your day. For a lot of people, it's easy for that to like a little calorie ad like that to sneak in with every single meal, right? And easily add up to hundreds of calories every day. Now, do you always have to be 100%? No. And again, that's the point here is like some of this may seem, it's not to say that everyone has to be at this like elite level of execution all the time. It's just understanding how much these things can impact your progress. And we don't have to be 100%, but we need to align actions with expectations. Or similarly, this is a common one that I used to get, and I really started to challenge this a lot more when it comes up now. When someone will say something like, I'm okay with the trade-offs I made this weekend, right? I just decided not to track my food. Or in fact, I decided to track my food, but I'm okay with the trade-offs. But then the next week, we're unhappy with our progress. We have to like, okay, well, this week still impacts what happens with us this next week as well, right? And it's like, are we truly okay with that? Like we may have justified it, but we have to be okay with, hey, the next week our progress is still going to be a bit slower. This is going to impact things in the bigger picture for us as well. And again, like our maintenance phases, our building phases allow a good amount more food flexibility in the fat loss. But similarly there, if we're in one of those phases, these things do still count, like your bicyclic taste do still count if we're gaining fat too quickly. Then this would again be something very helpful to audit. Anything else to add there before we get into the self-audit questions from y'all? Cool. Okay. So I think that if we are in a fat loss phase, one of the most helpful things you can do is honestly assess your last week, assigning a point for each of the following. First, did I weigh and track all of my food? Nothing went unweighed, untracked. If you can answer yes to that, you get 1 point. Did I hit all of my macros within the prescribed ranges every single day and all of my macros? If you can say yes to that, you get 1 point. Did I have any untracked bites, licks, tastes, drinks, sauces, or condiments? If you can say no to that, 1 point. Did I have any meals out that were just my quote unquote best guess rather than able to be tracked extremely accurately? If you can answer no to that, you get 1 point. Did I complete all assigned cardio at the prescribed intensity? If you say yes, 1 point. Did I hit my step target? Yes, 1 point. Did I complete all training sessions? Yes, 1 point. All right, so you have your total for how many points you got for the week. If you got 7 out of 7, we would expect, hey, we should have seen great progress. If we didn't see progress, we need to tweak the plan more and we'll see great progress next week. If you got 6 out of 7, okay, we were still like, that's still high adherence. We still did solid here. Now, that said, it depends on like, I mean, if I got 6 out of 7 and one meal out was like a massive 3,000 calorie meal, okay, that can still absolutely set us back. So this is more context dependent on like what that deviation was. But if we made progress, sick, we're probably in a good place. It's not holding us back yet. If we got 5, honestly, at this point, we're missing several of these. Again, just 2 of these, it can, and we're like talking a lean person trying to get leaner. I would say we're at getting closer to mediocre adherence. And it's unlikely we're going to have made a whole lot of progress, right? If we're having like untracked bias, licks, and tastes sneaking in, drink, sauces, condiments, and then alongside that, let's say we missed our step target. Again, I used this example before, like that easily, just those two things could cut your deficit in half. And it doesn't seem like that much, but that's the reality is probably aren't going to have made a whole lot of progress in that week. If we are in the 1 to 4 range, I would say we're basically not adherent. Again, talking about a lean person trying to get leaner, we're probably just not going to have made progress in that week. It will feel like we were pretty close to the plan, but not a lot happened in terms of weight, measurements, etc. Would you guys agree with that scale? Again, I know this can sound harsh, and that's not the goal. It's literally just math and like what we see over and over with clients. I don't think it's helpful to kind of like sugarcoat what it takes for a lean person to get leaner. And just the more you can understand this, the more we can just, hey, let's be dialed in, let's get the deficit done with, and let's get out of it to where we do have more food flexibility. But anyways, would you all agree with that scale or no?
Yeah, I'd say one of the most common conversations I'm having with our client base, which is this archetype, is the friction that they can often experience with just how locked in they need to be to see the progress that they want. It's wishful thinking, what a lot of people hear on social media, where you have other coaches talking about, like, you don't have to track macros, you can just eyeball, you can go out to eat, here's how to stay in your deficit and do X, Y, and Z. And the context is very different for someone who maybe is, does have a higher body fat percentage that is really just trying to get healthy. And they're new to tracking food, or, new to nutritional awareness, like, but for this person who often sends us full physique photos of Laura Lee Chapados, or, like a bikini pro or fitness professional, that's not, I mean, I would love to be the coach that can wave a magic wand and make all of these things work. Like, here's how to fit absolutely everything it is that you want to do into your plan. Like, here's how to cram in every social obligation, every piece of birthday cake, every like time your kid wants ice cream. Like, I'll wave my magic wand and fit all of that into your 1,300 calorie per day deficit. Like, I wish I could do that. I really do. But this again, just to emphasize, I'd say this is like the number one conversation that I'm having most often.
Yeah. And again, like none of it, there's nothing moral about this, right? Like you having a meal out or you having alcohol, that's not bad. We're not against any of those things. I love meals out. I wish I could drink more than I do. But if it's impacting our progress and we're not okay with that, which for a lot of people it is, we have to understand like the ramifications of how this could be impacting it. On the flip side, I've had some clients who I've worked with where it's like, dude, you're playing it pretty loose, but we're getting away with it. And I'm cool. I'm okay with that as long as we're still making the progress we want. Like it's not broken, so we don't need to fix it, right? But the context of like the people you mentioned we're having these conversations with, Natalie, that's not the case. It's like I feel like I'm nailing things, and if I'm still not seeing the progress that I want, okay, we need to dig a little bit deeper into that. Anything else to add?
It's okay to not want to do these things, but then
For
you
sure,
don't get to have the goal that you have.
for sure. We talked about this on our team call as well, kind of similar to the like, hey, clients being like, hey, I want to like do I was mentioning one client who was like, my main goal is to get like, or I want to do like a marathon. I want to do high rocks in the next like 6 to 8 months. But my main goal is still to get like super jacked and muscular. And it's like us just saying that these things aren't our top priority, unless you're planning to literally not train it for them at all and like go just wing it for this marathon, this is going to have an impact on our goals, right? Like where no matter where we say it falls on our priority list, like it doesn't work like that. Um, okay, so to wrap things up here, again, adherence exists on a spectrum. It is very easy to to overestimate your adherence. Just hitting your calories is not the same as hitting the plan. Estimated meals are not the same as measured meals. Bites, licks, taste, drinks, and condiments add up very quickly. Following the plan Monday through Friday afternoon is 64% adherence, not 80 to 90% adherence. The leaner and more advanced you are, the more details matter. Now, again, do we need to have elite adherence year round? Like, is this how we live our life in the building phase? Natalie and I are meatballs right now, right? Like, we've had some good food flexibility, and that's part of the beauty of building as well, right? But if the goal is to get shredded, we're gonna have to be pretty dialed in most of the time to continue to get leaner. Basically, you don't need to have an elite adherence year round, but you do need to understand what your goal requires.
And
You
the
can
worst place
shoot.
to be is mentally being restricted and being in a fat loss phase, but not being dialed in enough that you're not seeing the progress. So you feel all of the downsides of a fat loss phase. You're just not getting the positives. You're just not getting the progress that you want from it.
Phallus purgatory is what I used to always call that. And that's
Yeah.
it. That is where so many people live just all the time. And you're not productively building muscle. You always think about dieting. You're always thinking about trying to restrict food. Um, Again, just be dialed in. Just get the fat loss phase done with so we can like work on bringing food back up.
I think it's important to mention as well, because we always talk about the phasic method of dieting and nutritional phases and periodization throughout the year. I think a really nice way to wrap this up is to talk about how, this is why fat loss is a phase. We
Correct.
are all big proponents of rolling up your sleeves and just like getting it done, like so that we don't have to spend more time here than is necessary. Because it's important to understand that you don't need to make these sacrifices year round.
Right.
And when your adherence is not good enough for the goal you say you want, you are going to spend more time swimming upstream in fat loss. And this is how you get to the point where you feel like you're always dieting. And so all of these things get worse when if you just kind of rip the band-aid off, strip all of these things out, we can get this over with and we can get you back to maintenance or building. I know, Jeremiah, you and I are both now in a cleanup phase, like after a long period of time spent building and growing. And like one of the first things that I did when coach dropped calories was like stripped everything out. I was like, all right, like, I'll normally do like a splash of like almond, like unsweetened vanilla almond
Yeah.
milk, literally a splash in my cold brew per day, like gone. Like stopped with the IHOP, even though IHOP is trackable, but again, it's a meal out. So it's just like cut out all of those things.
Hmm.
And I'm willing to make those short-term trade-offs to get this over with. So I can
Yeah.
just get back to what it is I really want to be doing.
Yeah. I think that's a very good way to kind of put a bow on this because just listening to the episode, if you don't have a whole lot of context, like I don't want to live like that all the time, right? Like I'm not. We talked about elite adherence. I'm not at that elite adherence level in a building phase. I follow things closely, but like I'll have like a sip of Katie's wine or like we'll have like meals out that I'm just estimating. And I'm fine with that. I encourage my clients to do the same as well, right? Because I want us to be able to like enjoy that. And that's unless we're going crazy with it, is it massively detrimental to our progress? No. Could it be more perfect? Yeah, but I think like most of us are still okay with the trade-offs we're making there, right? Like,
Call that like a lifestyle tax.
right, exactly. And it's okay, right? We don't want you to have to live like this year round, nor do I want to live like that year round. But when we're in fat loss, it just sucks either way. So just let's just get it done with quicker, basically. Anything else to add from y'all before we wrap it up? Perfect. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's show. If you did, leave us a 5-star rating and a review. If you would like to apply to work with our team, hit the link in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.